Oh, right. A world record has been made. A world first speed running record. And it has come down to every last second mattering. So a few weeks ago, I put out a $500 bounty on a speedrun challenge to beat 10 hard AI all at once. And I created a special map so it was set spawns to reduce the variability. And I basically said, hey, whoever gets the best time is going to get $500. I really wanted to galvanize the community and get people all kind of working, stealing strategies off. And the trick was you had to do it on stream, so there was no way to hide strategies. You had to basically get out there, do it publicly. And I wanted to create just a whole community effort and competition to see how hard people could grind this time down. The early attempts were about half an hour, then down to 25, then 20 minutes. But very quickly, it started dropping really quickly, and the final race was intense. It came down to just 3 players, Puppy Joe, Goblin, and Printf, fighting over a matter of just a few seconds to decide the winner. The last few days were absolutely crazy. We have Puppy Joe here. You can see this is actually a 13.5-hour stream. Puppy Joe was going right up to the finish line. And we can see here the final seconds of one of his best runs. I mean, I'm telling you guys, these guys were streaming insane amounts to try and get that best time right up until the cutoff yesterday. So Puppy Joe, I mean, he did really good. I think what was funniest about his setup, you can see the graphics don't look that good. His computer was lagging like crazy, trying to live stream and also play with so many units and carriers at once, where whenever there was big fights, it would like the screen's all pixely. You could see it's like very few frames a second. It's just absolute madness. Now, people were worried that the patch, we weren't sure when that was going to come out, would hurt Protoss's chances, but this was actually played just yesterday after the patch when he got his very, very best time of 11 minutes and 43 seconds. But it wasn't just Puppy Joe. We also had Printf, who streamed, check this out, over the last 3 days leading up to the challenge, a total of 25 plus hours. I think closer to 26 hours over 3 days. I mean, he was grinding runs over and over and over again. At the time, Goblin had the record, and Printf knew that he needed to get a ridiculously fast time in order to beat him when this moment happened.
Not good enough.
It was heartbreaking seeing him get so close, but he wasn't quite able to top Goblin, who in the end came in with one of the most ridiculous times I've ever seen. I don't know how he did this, but he managed to get it down to 11 minutes and 38 seconds. So this is Goblin's world record winning run, which I've got to show you guys now. There was actually a special category for Terran and Zerg. For those who are wondering, oh, it's only Protoss. We did within a few days figure out Protoss was the most powerful. And I actually ended up adding 2 prizes, $100 each for best Zerg and best Terran time. So I'll cover those briefly at the end of this because those were pretty cool as well. But this is just crazy. 11 minutes 38. Like, to give you guys the backstory, essentially what happened, right, is Goblin was ahead of the curve. Early on, he got a time of about 15 minutes, and we were like, whoa, 15 minutes? But then a few other people were hot on his tails, and then he jumped forward to like 14 minutes, and we were like, whoa, what the hell, dude? How are you doing it so fast? Out of nowhere, about 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half, Printf comes out, 12-minute time, blowing out Puppy Joe and Goblin by over a minute at that point. I think it was about a minute and a half shorter than theirs. And that was when things got intense. Because Goblin played really well and had done a lot of grinding, but there was a lot of details that Printf had figured out with, like, I'm going to talk you guys through them, but things like blocking with a Nexus at the front to derp out the enemy AI when they're attacking in, exactly what to prioritize, focusing with the carriers. I believe it was Printf who also was the first player to realize you shouldn't accept the surrender from the AI, because then the money will distribute to the other players, and you want to make sure you kill all their bases and stop them from mining. And if they don't have any money to rebuild a base or mining, they'll often give the GG and surrender. And the trick is to get all those 10 surrenders and accept them all at the very end of the game once the last one comes in. So Printf came up with all of these really cool advancements, but he always knew that because he had to live stream it, putting it out there meant there was a pretty good chance that some of the pro gamers who are more active than him, obviously has a full-time job at, I think, programming and stuff, he thought, okay, these guys might take my little clever things and use them. He said, look, I know there's a realistic chance of that. And in the end, we did see Goblin, who was so far ahead not using those things, start to integrate a lot of these little details, added with his great mechanics, great focus firing, all of those little details, and start doing it. Now, let's just first of all start by talking about why was Protoss so good at the challenge. The reason is Chrono Boost is great. And essentially, with the hard AI, they'll attack you at the earliest at about 4:20, but more often about 4 minutes 50 or 5 minutes. So Protoss, we found that because you can, if you don't have to worry about getting attacked, the whole thing that balances Protoss normally is how fragile they are early on with few units. But this map's designed so you get like 6-7 bases to yourself and a choke point leading into them. And with Protoss, you can build static defense the easiest. So with Zerg, if you want to build 10 spine crawlers, that's 10 drones you need to sacrifice, and you need creep to build them there. With Protoss, you can run over there and just plop 10 cannons down with one probe, and you can do it at the last second. Whereas Zerg needs to spread the creep and sacrifice 10 drones. Terran, you could build bunkers, but you need units to put in those bunkers. Planetary Fortress costs not only minerals, but also gas, has more lead up time. So Protoss just felt like it was the most able to focus on maximizing chronoing your economy, getting an insane amount of workers out. And you can see already 47 probes. The supply is nothing but probes. So remember that count in the top right tells you the actual current worker count. They could do that, and then at the last second, it's all economy, and then explode into like 10 cannons at the front early on is what people were doing. A shield battery for overcharge and going from there. And that's why this base on the left is important, because notice it can battery overcharge batteries on the high ground there that are just on the edge. And now as we get closer to 5 minutes, looks like there's going to be a single cannon and a battery in case one player attacks early. So he's actually playing quite safe, and he's going to start building his Stargates already here at 4 minutes at the front. 4 minutes and 5 seconds, 62 probes. One of the big things Goblin did in his early runs is he would go to about 85 or 90 workers to get a lot of money, but then he'd max out and he'd very quickly have to start killing his own probes in order to free up supply to build more carriers. And Printf never did that. Printf would just rush to about 70 workers, and then he would actually start, building the carriers earlier in the game and not have to worry about killing probes nearly as much. And Goblin, I believe, has started in this run to take that on board as well. Now notice he's building a Nexus at the front. The great thing about the Nexus is it has curved edges, so it creates these kind of wonky choke points on the sides that some units can squeeze through, but a lot of them can't, or they can barely do it. So what he's trying to do is just create something where the units attack this very heavy tankiness of the Nexus. They waste their time doing that, and the other units filter through just a few at a time into the cannons and batteries, which is especially important if banelings are coming in. You want those banelings to get stuck behind the other units so you can focus them down with the cannons. Otherwise, banelings absolutely ruin your day. And notice, rather than the 10 cannons players were starting with, it's just a few cannons, a battery, a Nexus up front. And that's the beauty of this. And look, the probe's going to try and bait those units in. The details here were so slick. And they're going to ignore the building static defense and focus over the other ones instead. And of course, battery overcharge. He's actually turning off auto heal on one of those shield batteries. That's interesting. Oh, because he wanted to save energy on the back battery. So he's said, don't heal, let the battery overcharge heal, because that doesn't cost energy, and that should be enough healing. And then I'll turn battery overcharge back on autocast now as it runs out. Wow, the level of detail. And already pre 6 minutes, we've got so many carriers starting up as well. So you can see he's looking close to getting supply blocked here. He does need to go build more pylons. I think that's a slight mistake. Nice chrono boosts. And he is starting those air weapon upgrades as well. The army backing off there, feeling like it is going to be defeated. And he's going to start a bunch of pylons. Now, that supply block's not bad, remember. 5 carriers is 30 supply. So he's gone to 76 probes, 75 mining, plus 1 builder. And that is, according to him, it's the perfect way of doing it. It is the absolute perfect way of managing that. More cannons going down on the low ground there as well. And he's going to rally the carriers straight into the base. Now, the trick with this, check this out. You've got carriers popping at 6 minutes 30, and you can immediately get in there and start killing the AI. The really cool thing is early on, a lot of players were trying to kill the AI. Goblin was the first one that I saw. Oh, banelings. But notice some of the banelings got stuck, and he focused them down. Very well done. Basically, if you kill their bases, they can't mine more money. And then you can go straight on from there into the next base and come in with the next wave of carriers out of your production to kill them as they rebuild. And then if they don't have enough money, they will be out. So Printf was explaining the strategy here. He was saying, well, Pig, basically the whole theory that we came up with this, and I'm not sure if he came up with it first or Goblin, but it was definitely Goblin who I saw doing it first, was if you kill a base, the AI, while rebuilding their base, even though they have no mining, will keep building units, right? So they'll start a new base or 2 bases, keep building units. They'll spend all their bank. If you can kill those next bases before they've mined anything from them, or when they've just started mining, they actually won't have enough resources to build a new one. And they'll go, oh, no money, no mining bases, GG. So that's the theory, is this is the fastest way to get the AI to tap out. So notice he's already killed 4 bases here, 2 of each of these players. And he just moves on, kills a few stalkers on the way out, but he's like, nah, straight into the next base. And he's already sending carriers down the right side as well. So he's going to have 2 squads of 5 carriers going down each flank of the map. And then the follow-up carriers are going to split down the left and then down the right for the cleanup crew. And it's pre-8 minutes, and he's already focusing down just things that shoot up, spore crawlers, turrets, that sort of stuff, and the mining bases, adding the last pylons he'll ever need for this game. And you'll notice he's just doing 4 bases. Doesn't bother with a 5th or a 6th. This game, you only want it to go for 3 or 4 minutes more at most anyway. So there's no point taking new bases right now. It's all about getting in there, microing these carriers. You want to make sure you don't lose them. Notice the enemy does attack the carriers a little bit, but over the interceptors, but they'll still just fight interceptors with static defense. Now, this is something which was kind of tragic with Printf and why he was so frustrated in that clip I showed you. The patch did drop just 2 days ago, and I was saying throughout the whole challenge, look, if the patch drops, it might change your chances for the better or the worse. It's important to just grind early, don't hold back any strategies, because we don't know, there's no transparency on when that patch would drop from Blizzard, so you gotta get in there. Now, what it changed was the attack priority on the interceptors was lower than the carrier. So now turrets, spores, this sort of stuff would automatically start shooting the carrier. Whereas this run here, this was played pre-patch, so it's a little bit easier microing those carriers and not getting them focused down. He's going to start focusing some of his probes down with his cannons to free up more supply. And notice he's got this secondary cleanup crew already going in that left side, denying their bases. And he's hoping to get them to tap out in a moment. Once he clears up their cannons, the turrets, and the bases, it seems like for some reason they'll stay in there. And yep, he's already got the bottom middle blue player to tap out. And he's into the very last couple of players in the back, killing their bases. So he's got 1 player out. There's a red hit point carrier. That's very low. That could be scary if he loses it. It's not the end of the world if you lose one of those carriers. You've still got firepower, but any firepower that drops down on the front lines does hurt you because it just lowers that damage output and that ability to push them out of the game. Another corrosive bile hits him. Oh, that's annoying. Hard to dodge corrosive biles in 3 places at once. That's actually one of the better anti-air forms just because you're multitasking so fast. Still chrono boosting +3 air upgrades, which I think is coming in now, and more carriers. He's got 3 players out of 10, 7 remaining as we hit the 10-minute mark. The carrier's moving forwards here. He's going to keep focus firing as much as he can. You can see he's skipping around. He's looking for the cannons, trying to get these players out of the games. He's already got those 2 bottom ones and a player in the top left to the gray player to get out. He's got to get these players out. There's Void Rays there, which are a problem for him. And it looks like that's some pretty good resistance on that right side of the map that he's having to clear up. Because remember, those weren't the first players he killed, and as a result, they've rebuilt a fair bit. He also hasn't had a chance to check the gold bases. And if those gold bases are taken, that could be a problem. 10 minutes 30 right now. He's taking out more bases. He's looking for those GGs, and it can get a little bit tense because you're not sure, is there another base? Do they have a gold base? Do they have enough money to rebuild once or twice? You know, what's going on? Just cleaning up those stalkers that were focusing his carriers down. And he's going to keep on moving through. Another GG comes in. Another one. That's 5, 6, 7. I think that's 7 or 8 players he's got, which means there's only 1 or 2 left. And it's so hard to keep track. I can't even keep track of which players have GG'd and which haven't. He knows. He's been practicing this so much, and you can tell he's just doggedly hunting down these hatcheries. Purple player has not quit. Neither has this player up here. So purple and green seem to be 2 of the last holdouts. He's clearing up the gold bases as well. He gets green out, which means purple is one of the last ones in that bottom right side. He's like, dude, what the hell? Looks like he missed-targeted. He did not target that layer as quickly as he should have. That might be the last player, because the left side dark blue player, kind of purpley blue, has tapped out. It's full purple. That's it. They just gave the GG. Oh, wait. Did they not give the GG? No, that's not the purple GG. That's the previous one. That's it. That's the last one coming in. He's got to click the all accept, and he gets it barely on 11 minutes and 38 seconds. And you know what? If he focused those 2 purple bases down a little quicker, he might have got it even quicker. But what a wild time. Do you know how hard it is to kill 10 AI? Even with such a perfect setup, to get them all to tap out this fast, multitasking 3 to 4 squads of carriers at once. I mean, this is just so astonishing how much he shaved this time down. So to give you guys context, I was updating the scoreboard over here on the original YouTube video. We had Goblin at 11:38, the best Protoss time. Poppy Joe at 11:43. Printf at 12 minutes. Now, Printf did get a time that I think was like 11:46 or 11:48, something like that, on stream. But what was heartbreaking for him is he actually got 11:35, 3 seconds better than Goblin in practice before the patch, but it was in practice. It wasn't streamed, it wasn't recorded. and he wasn't able to replicate it in that 26-hour stream marathon he did in the 3 days leading up to the end. And so he did end up missing out, which is really unfortunate for Printf and Puppy Joe. Now, we also put up that prize money for Terran, and Hero Marine by far got the best Terran time. Hate Me by far got the best Zerg time. All right, so this one was from Hero Marine, and he was so far ahead of the curve. He actually got this run like a few weeks earlier. And what I loved about this is I went into Hero Marine's stream yesterday, and I was like, hey, dude, you still haven't submitted your time was by far the best, but you didn't submit it yet. What are you doing? And he's like, well, Protoss is so far ahead, like, I'm not going to get any money. And I was like, no, there's a $100 prize pool, because I didn't announce that till a few days after the first prize pool. A lot of people missed it in future. I'm going to make sure I announce this ahead of time. And Hero Marine didn't even realize. So I had to hunt him down. It's like, here's the VOD, submit your video. And he ended up submitting this one where he got a really sick run after a few days of grinding the challenge. All right, so I'm just going to show you the cliff notes of his build. Notice he's getting quick 4 bases, but of course you can't chrono boost or lava inject to pump drones out as fast as Zerg or Protoss. So he's going to go a planetary at the front with a tank sieging behind it. The planetary's just started morphing at about 447. The tank can keep it alive for a little bit, but of course he's going to have to repair it as well. And I love that he has an engineering bay and a barracks in front to help block it and funnel units into a choke point in front of it. Behind that, he's going to go for battle cruisers. And this was a really cool strategy, because I originally thought battle cruisers were just too slow to get up. But I was like, there is potential because of their teleport. You can already see, just comparing the supply, that, Goblin was already well up to carrier. The 5 Stargate production was about to start kicking in at about, I think it was 5:40, 5 carriers at a time. And he was already up at like 76 probes about 30-40 seconds earlier than of course Hero Marine's able to. So you can see the comparisons, but check it out. He was already getting ship weapon upgrades to increase their damage. He'd added that in with the armory. And you can see how he's just kind of repairing that planetary. Unfortunately, I think he let some banelings through, which is why the planetary got as low as it did. But he barely is just keeping it alive with a minimal investment. And it seems like a near perfect early game D. So Hero Marine teleported his first battlecruisers into the base at about 7 minutes 30. And started also prioritizing just shooting the units that could shoot up and then focusing the bases down. I'm not really sure the damage output difference between battlecruisers and carriers, because I know carriers obviously do big burst damage, but the BC shoots so constantly and at such a high rate that I think it's also very powerful. The problem is, of course, that you can't rebuild interceptors on the front, so the BCs have more of a problem with dying. And this is something Hero Marine spoke a lot about this in the challenge. He said, basically, look, what I've noticed is because the builds of the AI aren't set, if I get a lot of Void Ray Protosses, it's really hard. And I was like, oh, and then I was watching him, and he was playing games where they just kept building Void Rays, and those Void Rays just do so much damage to the battle cruisers, you keep losing BCs. But if you got Protoss players that were more ground focused, didn't build many Void Rays, it was only the occasional Void Ray here or there, he found he had way more success. So that was kind of where the RNG came in. And there's always a little bit of RNG in speedruns in general. Same thing where like these guys, Goblin and as well as Hero Marine, they died at the 5 or 6 minute mark a lot of the time when the attacks hit a little bit harder and faster, or their early game defense just was ever so slightly off. So I'm showing you guys the successes. Remember, there were so many hundreds of hours across the player base put into making this look as clean as it is. What I found really interesting is Hero Marine actually got like so many battle cruisers on the right side committing in. I think it was 7 or 8 before actually splitting BCs to the left side. And I think part of this is because he was baiting the whole army in with these BCs and actually fighting that army, so he didn't need to build as much defense at home. So it was only here at about 9:30 where he starts teleporting BCs into that left side, and he's even having to teleport battle cruisers home to repair them. And he's going to use those as the sort of cleanup crew. But what is nice is new BCs teleporting out, once they get repaired, can also teleport back to the very deep bases on the backside. So unlike Goblin, who has time pressure to get the carriers into the back bases as quickly as possible, Hero Marine was like, I can teleport over there and cover that distance later on if I need to. Let's focus on making sure I'm actually cleaning these armies up so my planetary doesn't get overwhelmed, and cleaning up these players next to me a little bit more quickly. Trying to make sure they don't rebuild. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Hero Marine dropping 4 mules to repair 1 battlecruiser. That was one of my favorite highlights of this game. He just left 1 BC there that was trying to stop those players from rebuilding rather than focusing on the follow-up cleanup crew. So a little bit of a different technique to Goblin. Of course, while we watch Hero Marine clean up, we should mention as well, Uthermal actually had a very good time of about 17 minutes 15. Unfortunately, he didn't play it on stream, so it hadn't qualified. But basically, as soon as he put that up, later that day, or I think it was the next day, Hero Marine came in and started getting his first times that was sub 16 minutes. And I think Uthermal's was about 17 minutes 15. So Hero Marine got some really nice runs, and he really put the time into it as well. I'm telling you, he had like days where he didn't get very many good runs, but he just kept grinding and grinding until all the pieces started to click together. You could see by about 13 minutes, he was dropping scans on the right side to make sure the players were gone, but he was also shoving into these back bases for the first times, 15, 16 minutes, and denying their last bases. And he goes from 3 GGs up to the 4th one there, and you can see the last players are starting to get pushed out. Now, I think one mistake he made here is his rally of battlecruisers should have been cleaning up the orange player in the very bottom down here. I think that orange player and maybe even that blue player, I think the blue player left, but the orange player didn't. So it would be really good if he just rallied his starports there. But of course, easy for me to sit here watching a man Yamatoing, frantically microing battlecruisers in 4 bases at once and be critical. Harder for him to pick up on that when he is managing so many things at once. Because it took longer to take these players out early on, and he wasn't able to hamstring them with the early carriers in the backline the way Goblin was, the gold bases did get built, and he's had to split BCs into those to take them out. He's now starting to stack up more GGs as he closes on the 15-minute mark. And you can see he's kind of just on the cleanup crew of trying to get them to leave, which can be very difficult here. He's still trying to like scan, check that there's no bases hidden up. He's like, did they rebuild there? He hasn't checked the bottom gold base. I think it's unlikely there's a base there, but you never know. I think a purple unit just came from there, so actually purple's left. Oh, he's gonna start accepting the GGs early. I think he's lost track of it. He's like, oh god, he just gave them money by doing that. So now that might make it harder for them to leave as the money gets distributed to the other players, even if it's just a little bit of minerals for each of those players. But he gets 3 more.
Ah,
it
new
doesn't
record.
matter.
At least a small improve.
I love seeing that psyched up reaction from Hero Marine. He said, hey, at least I got a small improvement. You can see it was 15:47, and then he got this 15:35 time. It is frantic just how busy he is. And he did actually get up to 3-2 air upgrades at the end. This hero battlecruiser on 74 kills. An admirable run, and honestly, absolutely blew the competition out of the water. I'll be honest, the last few days weren't very hectic for Terran submissions, because once Hero Marine got this and people were trying, and most of them couldn't even get close. And a lot of the players just weren't even submitting, and they just said, Hero Marine's too far ahead of the curve, man, and they threw in the towel. Next up for the challenge, the Zerg winner, Hate Me. Of course, you guys can check out all these guys. Links to their streams are below, and the winning videos as well. If you guys want to go, please go check out the streams of everyone who played this challenge. And a shout out to everyone who we're not even mentioning, like Vibe and Jason and everyone else who spent some time grinding the challenge, trying it out, and giving it a go. Like, I was blown away by the response we had in the first few days. But this is Hate Me _SC2, Austrian pro Zerg player. And he was just leading the curve. Early on, Katz was kind of innovating and getting his time down, 27 minutes, 25 minutes, 22 minutes. And then Hate Me came out of nowhere and was like 21 minutes, 20 minutes, 19 minutes, 18 minutes. And he eventually got down to this final time. And I loved seeing the evolution of what he did in his strategy. So what was really cool about Hate Me's strat is he started getting just 1 gas about 3 minutes. And then just started slowly mining off that, adding a second gas. Starts a lair right on 4 minutes, because he does want to get lurkers up very quickly as like the very efficient splash damage unit. And then right on 4 minutes 10, he's playing a little bit on the greedier side, because we do know sometimes they attack at 420, but he's like, I can handle that with queens. I'll be good. And he's trying to get the creep right up to this ridge line. He wants these spines as far forward as possible. And you can see already how much more expensive this is to get up than it is to build the cannons in terms of setting yourself back 10 drones. The supply differential compared to Protoss and even Terran is pretty significant, especially remembering a lot of that supply is in queens, not in workers. So you end up even further behind, and this is why Zerg was the weakest race for the challenge at the end of the day. What I love here is this micro. Check it out. Runs the queens in front. They take very little damage to the banelings, whereas banelings wreck spine crawlers. Uses the transfuses, buys those seconds. And this squad of 6 or 7 queens that he went for in each of his runs, he'd always run it forward to tank units that do bonus damage to armored or buildings. And then he'd run back otherwise to let the spines do the work that they do best. And he was really, really on point with how he used these queens.
We need more monies. Minerals.
And what I noticed is with this forward defense, rather than blocking it up like with the carrier and battlecruiser builds where you then can use the carriers and BCs to start clearing the army, you don't need as much defense. The armies that come in don't coalesce. They kind of come in dribs and drabs, and he kills them one at a time. And that's why it's so important to get the spines up here, rather than letting them all group up, collect, get blocked by a hatchery, and then flood in at once. And this was the big evolution that just made him so much better than when I tried it, when Katz tried it, and when a bunch of other Zerg players tried it. He was very methodical with that early defense, and he just goes straight to Hive behind it. Here's my favorite part of the build. He added 3 Evo chambers. Earlier, he was always going 2 Evo chambers and playing nothing but Hydra Lurker every game. And if he did try to build Lings to finish players off, they didn't have any melee upgrades, or maybe only +1. But I criticized him a lot in his earlier runs for that. I was like, oh, come on, please get the upgrades. Some of you may have seen the update video where I was talking about that. And he just added the 3rd Evo, really quick Adrenal Glands and Zerglings in this run. And it really helps you finish players off because Zerglings are so high damage. There's a few scary fights like this one where the army's coming in from both sides. But for whatever reason, the AI just kept kind of coming in one at a time and then getting their butt kicked and backing off, realizing it was a bad fight. So I'm not sure if it's just because there's so much damage coming out from the spines, but you could see the AI would kind of go in and be like, oh man, this is not working out, and they'd often pull back. What's so key here is getting lurkers, and then very soon after lurker range, right around the 8-minute mark. And you can see right when these attacks are going to start getting scarier with siege tanks and other stuff, those lurkers are doing fantastic. And also the high ground, the tank derping in and not sieging up, pretty damn effective on the setup. And these lurkers just add so much. Right at this point where the big attacks come in, you've got some Lings to tank, and you've got these lurkers doing devastating damage behind it as well. This is where right around the 9-minute mark, Hate Me swaps from defense to aggression. And notice he moves the lurkers forward to intercept reinforcements that might come to the aid of this player, while he just floods Zerglings into that base. A little worried about losing lurkers, and he does lose one there, which is unfortunate. Those queens have been non-stop transfusing, by the way. Their value is just absolutely insane. Whenever he runs into stiff opposition, he does move the lurkers and the hydras in to really deal with the scary units in the army. But the Lings are good as a quick reaction force, and as we were saying, whenever the fight's over, the Lings can flood in and finish the bases off. And even here, he's like, hey, they're throwing their armies away. Let's just click those Lings into the back of the base, get in there and do some big damage on their economy. Already getting some GGs, 11:30. The Hydra Lurker started eliminating the players in the bottom left, and then the Lings in the top right wiped out the economy right after dealing with one of the army pushouts. And this is the advantage of having such a big far forward static defense position, is whenever you deal with an army, you're like, oh, your base is right there? I can run in and kill your stuff now. So Hate Me got really good at like crushing an attack and then jumping into their base and wiping out their economy and their setup. It was really impressive because as the game went on here at the 13-minute mark, Hate Me starts pushing with just small squads of Lurker Hydra, trying to get these forward positions. And once again, he's continuing this kind of strategy of like splitting the AI up so that they're fighting in dribs and drabs. And it's going to allow him to just rally Lings and Hydras in to start really wiping out their economy. You're going to notice there's less of these big masses of units coming in. It's just this small stuff. Burrowed Zerglings there as well to block the bases, like really cool details, and moving spores and spines forward just in case any more attacks come in, making sure they don't interrupt his rally. You can see it was more of the same, just clearing those players, pushing 2 sides, then splitting into 3 different sides, burrowing Lings in the bases to make sure there's no rebuilding going on. And with the Ling rally especially, there's no way probes can get out to build new bases elsewhere. And the GGs started to come in. Now you're going to notice he had been accepting the GGs, so he wasn't doing the wait to the last second tactic, which I think arguably is not too bad because it's so hard to keep track of, and with the Zerg style, you're pushing through anyway. There's probably not that many resources getting handed over, arguably. You'd have to check the replays to know for sure. So only here at the end when he's getting these last GGs is he actually waiting for it. And I think this was just really well played. Hate Me showed just the multitasking, the amount of different things he's focusing on, the Lings cleaning everything up. The downside is it's harder to get the AI out. Because the game's gone longer, they've banked up more money, they've got more buildings, and sometimes they kind of bug out. And even when you've killed all their buildings and their ability to rebuild mining bases, there's always like one AI that's like, I have a spore crawler! And eventually he gets that GG there and gets that very nice time. You can see it there on the very last second, coming in on 17 minutes 35. Hats off to Hate Me for a sick run. All right, guys, well, that wraps it up. This was an amazing experiment for me here. Shout out to Dot, my wife, whose idea this was originally, but I think this is just such a fun idea to get a challenge going put some money out to the community, and to see the StarCraft directory so active with everyone playing one challenge and all sharing ideas and stealing it from each other for a few days was awesome. I definitely want to run another thing like this in the future. So if you have any ideas on particular twists to make the challenge interesting or fresh, how we can do it in a way that would make you excited to take part or to watch your favorite streamers play, please let me know down in the comments below. And thank you everybody who tried it out, whether you were successful or not. This was a really cool community event, and I definitely want to do more in the future. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye and good night.